Adjunct Professor Moran, Macroeconomics 111. In our last videos, we explored demand, the law of demand, changes in quantity demanded, and shifts in demand. Similarly, now we have to discuss supply. Demand reflects the behavior of consumers. We know that at a high price, quantity demanded will fall, at a low price, quantity demanded will rise. Now we need to explore producers' behavior with respect to price and quantity. We'll define supply first. Supply is a quantity of goods and services that people are willing and able to sell at different prices. When I was in college, only people in Buffalo knew about buffalo wings. And when I came back to Long Island, it occurred to me nobody knew about buffalo wings here. And I could have opened up a fast food restaurant and sold things that people were familiar with, but that included wings. So they'd come to my restaurant, my fast food restaurant, for pizza and Heroes, but they would discover wings, and I have like a little monopoly. And I thought I would open it up between Suffolk and Stony Brook. This way I'd have twice as many students to demand my product. But I didn't do it, and so why am I just still a poor, humble, underpaid teacher? Because although I was able to open up a small fast food restaurant, I wasn't willing. I didn't go to college to open up and then stand over a deep fryer all day. Now, I went and watched a dart league play at a place on Fridays where people consumed root beer. And darts requires you to make a lot of subtractions and do a little multiplication. And I noticed that as people consumed additional units of root beer, their ability to do basic arithmetic was somewhat diminished. So I thought I would invent a dart calculator. And it would have all the numbers of the dartboard, it would have a double, triple ring. Now, if this is such a great business idea, why am I still just a poor, humble, underpaid teacher? That's because although I was willing to do it, I wasn't able, because I didn't have enough money for a factory to hire people to do the statistics, to design the circuit boards and buy an assembly line. So in order to supply the market, you have to be both willing and able. But it doesn't tell us how people behave. So now we need to discuss the law of supply. The law of supply is a direct relationship with price and quantity. Quantity supplied. Holding costs constant, when prices go up, it becomes more profitable for the businessman to produce something, so he'll make more of it. Let's take an example. Price, cost, profit. Let's say the price of something is 10 and the cost is 7. The profit is 3. Holding cost constant, if price rises to 12, his profit rises to 5. He definitely would, if he liked doing it at 3, he'll definitely do more of it at 5. He'll dedicate more of his resources to this and less to something else that was relatively less profitable. Let's make up some numbers here and say this is 10 and 15. When we graph this, price, quantity, 12, 10, 10, 15. At price of 10, the quantity demanded was 10. And when the price rose to 12, the quantity demanded was 15. Now we have a positive relationship between price and quantity supplied. All right? This change is a change in quantity supply. Representing supply, we'll use the supply schedule, a numeric table that expresses the relationship between price and quantity supplied. And we'll graph that to make the supply curve. And again, here we have one. Price, quantity, price 10 and 12, and quantity 10 and 15. 10 and 10, 12 and 15. So as price goes up, so does quantity supply. Price schedule, a supply schedule, a numeric relationship between price and quantity supplied. And then we graph it, and we have a supply curve. Now we can talk about changes in supply and changes in quantity supply and change in supply. The only thing that causes this is a change in price. Everything else that affects supply will be held constant. So again, we have y equals mx plus b plus some variable, other things that affect supply that aren't price. So as long as this is constant and this is changing, you'll have this. And this is a change, as we did before, in quantity supplied. But sometimes what happens is that any one price, producers will make more or less of something. This is a shift or change in supply itself. So supply is a positive relationship between price and quantity supplied. This is a shift in supply. And so here, if we do it algebraically, y equals mx plus b plus everything else that's not x that affects y. If now we hold x constant and allow the other things to change, then we're going to have a different value. And so what's happening here is, at the same price, people are producing more. I can't show you more at the same price on this line, because more on this graph implies a higher price. So this is a shift supply, and now we're going to explore what causes this to happen. And to make this easy to remember, you can remember rotten weather, resource costs, other things, taxes, technology, expectations, number of suppliers, and weather. Rotten weather, things that explain a shift in supply. Okay, changes in resource costs. A change in resource costs, holding price constant, will cause a shift in supply. So let's do an example. Now let's hold the price constant at 12, but say the cost goes up to 9. This person's profit has fallen to 3. So he'll again produce 10, but he's producing 10 at the same price. Price hasn't changed, but he's changing his quantity from 15 back to 10 because his profit has returned to $3. So to do that, we would have price of 12, cost rose, and the supply fell to 3. In this example, this is a decrease. This would be S1, and this would be S2. Because of the higher price, resource costs have gone up. The product is less profitable to make, so the entire supply curve will shift. Same price, no change. A decrease in supply caused by an increase in resource costs. Another thing that will cause supply to shift is technology. Technology always increases supply. At any one price, the supply curve shifts out. Do not think up and down. Think left and right, because these numbers get larger as you move to the right. Right? If you notice, if you think up and down, you would confuse this with an increase in supply, which you can see it's not. Technology always increases supply, because if you invent something and it doesn't work, you call it junk. You only call something technology if it works. So by definition, technology increases supply because technology will lower costs and increase productivity. Productivity is a per unit measure of output. Taxes and subsidies. Taxes are a fee the government charges business. When taxes go up, costs go up. When taxes go down, costs go down, changing profitability and shifting supply. Subsidies is an amount of money the government gives to business. So when subsidies go up, business costs in effect go down because they're receiving money from the government. When costs go down, the supply curve will increase. When subsidies go down, though, businesses have to shoulder more of the cost themselves. And so that would cause profits to fall, and the supply curve would shift to the left, a decrease. Changes in the price of alternate goods that can be produced. Sorry. This requires two graphs to show. There's no handy way of saying this. It's the price of alternate goods that can be produced. So let's say you own a factory, and it can produce inflatable sports equipment, like maybe a football and a basketball. Okay. S, S1, S2. the price of footballs rises. That would, holding costs constant, induce a producer to make more footballs. This is a change in the quantity demanded of footballs, which happens because of an increase in price. Rotten weather constant. Here, what's happening is at any one price, if you're using more of your factory to produce footballs, then you have to be using less of your factory to produce basketballs. So this is a change in supply caused by a change in the price of alternate goods that can be done. So here, price is, this is caused by a change in, I hate writing this, the price of alternate goods that can be produced. Price is constant, but rotten weather is changing. So this would be an example of like other. Other things in this category would be like the the coronavirus or a war, for example. Things like that would cause this to happen. The coronavirus is causing a tremendous decrease in supply. The country's entering a recession. Okay. Price expectations. Price expectations can sometimes cause a shift in supply, sometimes not. So if you're General Motors and you think consumers will be willing to pay more for cars in the future, you, at the same price now, you may produce more cars because you want to have that inventory on hand, so when the price goes up, you can actually increase the quantity supplied. But when it comes to things found naturally in nature, this won't work. If you think the price of milk is going to go up in the future, you can't ask the cows to work more overtime to increase supply. Whereas GM, if they anticipate the price of milk, cars to go up in the future, they can offer the workers overtime. They can run, instead of an 8 to 4 shift, they can also run a 4 to midnight shift and run a midnight to 8 a.m. shift, which is called the graveyard shift. And so supply is responsive to expectations about future prices, even though the price hasn't yet changed. But things that occur naturally in nature, like oil or milk, cannot. You won't get much of a change in supply. Cows don't work for overtime. Finally, another thing that changes supply, shifts supply itself, is the number of producers. Holding the amount each producer makes constant, the more suppliers, the more supply shifts to the right. Weather and agriculture. If the weather is really bad, you're going to get a strong decrease in supply, and that's examples of hurricanes and things like that. They can destroy crops. They can also destroy infrastructure necessary to bring crops to market. This was a discussion about supply, changes in quantity supply, and changes in supply itself.